Rose. Hey everybody.
Hi Rose.
Good Sunday, happy times. We will get started. I'll start the meeting by doing a little thing of reading the quote for the day, August 4th. Let's see. These are usually, it's funny, like I'm not a big tarot person, but this is almost like how people do tarot. They pick a card and then let it kind of guide the conversation or the study.
There's a philosophy group that I go to, the Theosophical Society.
PRS, we're all about PRS.
Yeah, so the one on Tuesday night, Amanda, she always starts it with a tarot card.
Yeah, she used to study.
That's what she said.
Pre-COVID, I guess, and so did Stephen Reedy. He's a big Theosophy. He's the dude. He's usually the other guy that's full of knowledge and really charismatic, kind of shorter guy that's there with her. He is a great Theosophist. He's great. Yeah, so Matty P. Hall, as you find, especially by studying him, he worshipped Blavatsky, and so much of what he did, he was just kind of expanding on little things that Blavatsky would, spend a bit on in Isis Unveiled. But yeah, he was great. He was he cataloged so much. Yeah, pretty cool. Anyway, I will start and make sure with my sound everybody hears me. We're working great. August 4th. There is no such thing as either dead or blind matter, as there is no blind or unconscious law. These find no place among the conceptions of occult philosophy. Wow. We do, that we hold fast to that old Vedantin principle that all matter has consciousness. And it's a tough one to understand sometimes. And the same, the old adage of as above, so below, everything has an astral existence. Everything, which is really used to be hard for me to think of when I was well, so is there just an astral cow, or is there also an astral hamburger if the cow, what about things that are made from other things? Probably, I guess so, because things change form all the time. We're essentially, all the molecules in our body are in a new form for this lifetime, from whatever those molecules came from. We're told stars, right? A neutron collapsing stars or something.
Yeah, I think that's why the sevenfold constitution of humans and the cosmos is important to understand because of what you just said. So consciousness is everywhere, intelligence is everywhere, but there's a difference between conscious and self-conscious. So man is supposed to be at least beginning to be self-conscious. Because I think I am, therefore I am.
Right.
Think or the opposite. So then the rock it has its own consciousness, because we know that within, even by science saying that within the rock there's this movement of particles, light. Then the mineral world has its own level of consciousness and intelligence. So therefore it goes along with that. There's no dead matter. Everything is life. Matter from the highest aspect, spirit and matter, is only two aspects of the same thing. And so therefore, when you say matter, spirit is within matter. And when you say spirit, it's because matter contains spirit. So in that way, there's nothing really, nothing that doesn't have any of these things. So, going back to the sevenfold principle, in humanity, then we have the elemental world, which pervades all matter as we know it. Sometimes it's called energy. So then we have the mineral world, which is also intelligent, and there's intelligence beyond the form. Then we have the vegetable, and we have animal, and then we have men. So every kingdom in Theosophy will learn that behind the form of any named kingdom, there is an intelligent entity behind it.
Right.
So, but the kingdoms below men, below, not, just because they're
Yeah, not lesser, but
right. It is said that those are they're evolving by natural impulse. By natural impulse means the law, karma. It's a natural impulse to evolve until, they become men.
Well, and even more.
And of course,
That's one of my favorite quotes I keep going back to is in one of the stanzas, and it's every particle, every monad tends to become God, just because it has that poised potential. Everything does it. Poised, like potentiality of everything.
Yeah,
in every monad, every particle. Before they even knew really what particles were, they were talking about, they had a better understanding almost of quarks than I think they teach at school now. Like, it's amazing.
Do you guys study Nassim Haramein at all?
I'm not familiar with him. No.
So he's an astrophysicist, and he talks about the way the nucleus of an atom and a black hole are the exact same construct. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so like everything is the same.
You look close enough at particles and matter, and there's no difference. It's that old adage that if you look close enough at, like, if I'm touching something, you can't see where I stop and it begins. You look close enough at your particles.
Yeah.
And it's to say the old adage from this comic book writer was a mystic, but there's this, this godlike being who was looking, they were mad at him for not saving lives, and he looked at his dead body and said, from a complete secular over kind of mind, kind of alien mind, he says, there's the same number of molecules in a live body as there in a dead body. There's no difference to him.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't really recognize life. So without, and that's the thing too, it's really hard to explain what is the material difference between a dead body and a live one. Like, what does life have? We get into that a lot. Does life have matter, soul, spirit, all the stuff we've been talking about the last 2 weeks? But yeah, got pretty deep.
Yeah, one thing that happens when we die, that actually that energy of the body becomes more active. And sometimes, you see movements when the person is already not there in the body. So what happens is that it's the analogy that there's no entity managing that form. So therefore, everything is like in chaos. It's just that's why there's more activity on a dead body than on a live body. But the other thing is, like you said, it's the same. There's no difference.
And probably more active, maybe not more active, but a different kind of elemental around a dead body than alive, for sure.
Right, yeah. Well, it is said that in Theosophy that once you leave the body, you go into a different state of consciousness. So the body is left to dissolve. And whatever the particles and atoms and everything will go back to their kingdom, whatever kingdom, and will take also what you fed those particles with, with your ideas, with your thinking, with your desires, with everything, but they will go back to their kingdom. So in that sense, we're participating with all the kingdoms, elementals, animals, and all that, yeah. And therefore, we pass on to another state of consciousness, only to burn whatever desires we couldn't fulfill on earth. And once we pass on to those stages, like, we read Deva Chan, and we come back again to pick up on things that we left.
Yeah. So what Berta's referring to is a really fundamental idea in Theosophy, is that of elementals and elementaries. A lot of people that study Theosophy don't know, which, some of the history is just for, I love history, but a really important thing to remember is that modern Theosophy, wasn't born in the late 1800s with Madame Blavatsky. The idea of Theosophia, the wisdom religion, the truth tradition, they've been around since before Plato, but Plato really fleshed it out for his time. And then, but before Blavatsky, had many people that were bridges of that kind of same information. Eliphas Levi, Spinoza, a lot of philosophers. And so, the metaphysicists, as philosophy calls it. So in modern Theosophy, it kind of came into the public scene when there was this surgence in what's called spiritualism, like seances and mediums and talking to your loved ones, or or accessing prior incarnations, prior lifetimes, and things like that. And Blavatsky, she was very interested in that, and she was her first time to America. She really wanted to see like all the kind of religious and spiritual fervor, and she ended up on the scene there. And that's kind of where she started kind of really spreading the first seeds of Theosophy. It was really kind of eventually getting to the point to really help to explain to this community. And, it was heartbreaking for a lot of them. And she lost, a lot of like popularity in the magazines and things at the time. But she made it a point to be like, this isn't your dead loved one. Just because it looks and sounds like them, it's not them. They're gone. They die, they're gone. They go into Dutch, they're getting ready for reincarnation. This thing is, it's a psychic imprint. It's something that is taken, we have this shared karma, like Roberto talked about. I don't know if there's any form of karma that's not related or wrapped up in the karma of at least one other being. It's all related, right? It is, yeah. And so that's kind of where, where we kind of get at is like, it's this, we all have Campbell talk called the collective unconscious, where it's different people have the same symbols and the same ideas. And it's kind of like that. We do share. It might have been kind of a wild idea in the early days to talk about psychic abilities. Yeah. But it's not such a wild concept, even to scientists nowadays, that there's some kind of almost genetic memory or something. There's all kinds of things. Yeah. But you just have to unlock it, basically. Yeah, you said the CIA, there's been periods where like even governments have really given it a shot, and they're spying on them.
Well, there's an analogy that you might heard about drops of water in the ocean. So we see ourselves as drops of water, and the water having the same properties, in the ocean and in a drop have the same properties. So if we are a drop, we're in the idea of the Theosophy is that we're not separated as water. We are the water elements. Mm-hmm. So whether it be on earth, on the air, on the clouds, on the ocean. So whatever act or thought we are sharing it with everybody. When you mention karma, that's how karma is. Mm-hmm. Because anything that we think and do and feel is spread everywhere. So
you have to remember what a foreign concept this was in the Western world in the 1870s, 1880s. Yeah. Like now, everybody likes to think they have some concept of karma and reincarnation, but like nobody heard of yoga in England. There have been some treatises, but they were very like intellectual and things like that. Very few people have ever heard of like divisions of schools within Buddhism. They maybe had heard of Buddhism, but like a lot of this, early Theosophy, especially Blavatsky, one of the amazing things is she's credited with. It probably would have took another 50 years for a lot of the stuff that she kind of revealed to the Western world without her. It would have had to more organically happen. But we take that for granted. A lot of the stuff she talks about in ISIS and Secret Doctrine, we're like, we kind of know that, but that's kind of because of the siege that she kind of laid in the West. It's amazing. But yeah, I think, hi Barbara, glad to have you. Got a small class this week, so we're gonna kind of, wing it.
That sounds great. Thank you.
So I'll start unless anybody else have anything to share.
Well, maybe now that you were going on that direction, I'll mention the three objects.
Please. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which is the formation of a brotherhood of humanity. Formation of a nucleus, a brotherhood of humanity. That's in a way, that's one of the objects of Theosophy. The second one, it's which she did in other writings. She actually is presenting all the systems of the study, whether it be yoga, Vedanta, Buddhism, all of that. And there's a phrase for that Tanya likes, that she said she grabbed this this bunch of flowers. What would you call a bouquet?
Yeah.
A bouquet of flowers. Now, the flowers represent all the philosophies that we have known so far. And she said, I just put the tie to wrap it around. So what it means is that she's given us the essence of all that is being presented in the past, the essence in all the writings. And therefore, the secret doctrine is called the synthesis of sciences, philosophy, and religion. So she's giving us the synthesis of all of that, which is the second object. You know, the study of all these ancient and modern philosophies,
Right.
and science and religious and everything.
Right.
And the third object is the idea of the study study nature and the psychic powers latent in humanity. So that becomes third.
That's a big one.
So a big one. But the thing is that first is the brotherhood of humanity. First, let's see ourselves as brothers and sisters, as beings from the same source. Then let's study and compare. And then that, in comparison, will bring those psychic powers within ourselves, but naturally. Now, like you were saying, and therefore, not to be force or not to be what is the other word? Not to think that something is like when people dies, and think you were talking about that you may think you're speaking to their
Actual being,
which is not. So
There's garments of them
Right.
almost like
Yeah.
the,
not to be fooled,
Right.
So therefore, the study helps you to understand all that this is supposed to come naturally, not by any artificial things,
Right.
facts, yoga or anything. I mean, there's that through yoga, of course,
Yeah.
but not by artificial things, waking up things in ourselves. Like that's the theologies.
Well, that's fundamental to all different, any little schismatic or whatever different groups of theosophy. Those three objects are constant. And it's really interesting too when he speaks of the synthesis of like the secret doctrine and things like that. I mean, you see, there's a lot of great people that are great at that. They're called like almost human encyclopedias or things. But I think in the history of mankind and since, there's been nobody like Blavatsky was able to take a tradition from 8,000 miles away and 10,000 years old and synthesize it into Platonic like philosophy and synthesize it with Vedanta, synthesize it with Kabbalah practices, Christian mysticism. I mean, there's a lot of people that are great at that. After her was Manly P. Hall, was amazing at synthesizing information, and he learned from her, And
Few people can do that.
I mean, especially now with the internet, especially AI, but like back then, you have to think of just the volumes you have to have.
The books that you
To
have
recall.
to read,
I mean, she quotes constantly books that are like, you don't even know how she found it. Where did you read that?
Right.
It's 50, it's like some like Rosicrucian manuscript from the 16th century. It's like, they let people read
Yeah, and other books that we don't even have
that anymore. Yeah.
Wow.
or had. Or it even speaks of some books that never went to the printer, a couple of them. And we say Blavatsky, but we know that she was only the vehicle
Right, and
because it was a master behind her.
and
Yeah.
So she was only a vehicle,
And that's
a speaker.
And that's one of the big attractions to theosophy, and sometimes a detraction, is that she did not want it to be a religion. There's no dogma, there's no faith involved. You can question everything she says. You're allowed to challenge. You're allowed to ask questions and be like, well, what about this? And she never claimed that she was, I think, so important to keeping things secular and equal, is never placing yourself or anybody else as an intermediary between you and divine wisdom. She never said that like, I'm your way to this.
Right.
She said you can do it on your own.
Yeah.
But like, I'm giving you lot of options. I'm giving you a lot of history, a lot of like teachings, but you know, there's a lot of what makes a lot of religions is there's a prophet or somebody that you need. They're
It's like a
okay,
self-righteous
or you need
kind of-
something. Yeah, and there's an intermediary.
Mhm.
And Theosophy teaches alongside with Vedanta and Buddhism and a lot of other that there is no intermediary between you and the one, the source.
No.
Because you are, you're part of it. All you
You
need
are
to
the
do
source.
is to reach out. So, yeah, I'll continue with kind of where we're at in the book. I'm kind of to get everybody up to speed. We're still in India. We're kind of getting to a point where the Olcott has been kind of making kind of a ruckus with the missionaries, and they're the local kind of Jesuit missionary faction that, you know, is kind of the last gasp of colonialism in India. They've got a lot of hold on like the populace and, you know, raising Christians. And so what kind of happens here, we've still got Madame Blavatsky and Olcott kind of in India, but what happens here is there's an article released by Olcott, correct? In the Light, was it?
Well, what are you saying?
I'll go ahead and read. I'm gonna jump through this kind of quick. But yeah, I didn't even move this window. Sorry, everybody. A curiosity of occult phenomena, which was to have later repercussions, was disclosed in 1883 in connection with the occult world. It's a book that Olcott wrote probably a few years before this happened, right?
All right, yeah.
Mhm. It's pretty rare, but you can find PDFs and stuff. During the summer of that year, the London Spiritualist publication, so very into kind of what they would consider New Age at the time, but more like seances and mediumship, called Light, printed a review of this book, which elicited from a Mr. Henry Kittle, an American spiritualist, a letter charging Mr. Sinnett's Himalayan teachers with having plagiarized an address given by Mr. Kittle in 1880. So what's happened here is Olcott is one of the founders. He has somewhat limited access to the masters. He's initiated, not ascended, but have chosen not to ascend to help kind of mankind. Like Blavatsky, from very early on, she said that she was, you know, a disciple almost of these masters. She was sent on this kind of mission to spread this idea that these masters have been around for a long time. She even names two of them at a point. And so obviously, like with a lot of things, when people, especially externally, looked into Theosophy, they would look into the amazing things or the fantastic things. So a lot of the public or like external world latched on this idea of these mystical masters and really like wouldn't let go of that. And even a lot of early Theosophists couldn't let go of it. They were really bothered that they couldn't have a direct line to these masters. And it caused a lot of problems, just not only because people like power, but like, you know, back then it wasn't normal for a female to be in such a position, not of power, but a position to be respected and to be like that this is coming, that she is this instrument. And she doesn't claim any authority or divine right, but you know, she's the bridge, like they said. So it caused quite a bit of problems. But yeah, you can find that book, and I'm not sure what the address was of Kittle, but what they caused to happen was, oh, it's right here, I highlighted. This is perfect. In 81, kind of halfway down. On the whole, the Kittle incident afforded a useful check on the tendency of religious-minded Theosophists to regard the Theosophical adepts and all their activities as entirely infallible. It has also served as theoretical instruction in the occult method of thought transference and precipitation used by the adepts, which doubtless has been regarded by many as a kind of theosophical miracle. Do you guys want to kind of talk about that, like theosophy and phenomena?
Well, what it says here is that first they said that what it says that they that the activities of the masters were infallible, which they themselves on one of the letters they said we're not infallible. Nothing is infallible.
They're not gods.
Everything is fallible.
Yeah,
Once you put in words, is fallible. It doesn't matter who it comes from.
Because there's no perfect language.
Exactly, yes, yeah. Even Buddhas or anybody, even Buddha made some mistakes, but every adept that comes to the world to help or give once more this philosophy, there's always, not that they make mistakes, but there's some mistakes made because of one language, because it's very short. And therefore, when it says at the end that the idea of miracles, that's the idea from the religions that once you see something incredible, you think it's a miracle. And Theosophy says there's no miracles. There's only law.
It's a cold science.
It's a cold science, yeah. We call it miracles because we don't understand what it is. And then we say, oh, it's, it was a miracle by an angel, by a saint, or by God, because we have no idea what it is. But in occultism, that's why there's no miracles, because everything has an explanation. And not that I don't know it, but at least that's what we do.
There were days in almost every.
I have one question. Okay, when the people say that everybody is fallible or infallible, I disagree in some kind about the master, because in one of the letter, I don't remember right now the number of the letter. They say we can make mistake. The master say we can make mistake, but in this body, in this body, but when we are adept, we couldn't make any mistake. They say that is clear. So if we're talking about the master can be make mistake, no, we say in the wrong way.
That's what we were saying.
Yeah, it's their
But I
incarnation.
didn't.
Because of the language or the ways of, the communication, right?
I mean, I keep going. I like that. No, because I think I'm with you. I think I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You follow me?
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's similar to like.
They say, okay, I can make mistake. They say like a grammar, or something like that. But what about the mission, about what we're going to learn? Nel pastel. No, I'm sorry. Say no.
Right, in their nature. You mean in their nature, they're not
So that's why,
I like
when
that.
the people say, I have it as question because I read, and then I keep reading because I want to understand well about that one. So it's a different. Because they say the Buddha or another one, okay, but the master, no.
Well, like the Buddha, even the Buddha, by not going into nirvana, by remaining physical, is accepting fallibility. The body that he's in is going to be fallible. Any way of communicating, even if he tells it the most beautiful, perfect Sanskrit of all time, like that's why there's these Dzogchen and these Buddhist manuscripts that are still getting translated, because these like really subtle ideas, they need 1,000 words or more and need to be refreshed for new ages of people to hopefully be able to grasp them. Because every new age, not necessarily nationality, but cultural, there's a lot of people and ages of people that were, more likely, more able to absorb this kind of information than maybe we are. I've been raised in a very non-meditative society and culture, and when there are some that like it's part of school, so yeah. But I do really appreciate that too, because what you said too is that about the fallibility, it like continues to go up, just like everything else. It climbs that ladder. Like if something is in our world, it's accepted some form of fallibility, and what is it? Temporary, like whatever form something takes in our world is temporary. It is not going to be forever. So sometimes, accepting that fallibility is, we've talked about that this Kali Yuga is supposed to be pretty bad and it's supposed to be rough times in the world, but it's also when we can grow the most as a spiritual being, we can advance the most. So like we can't just, chill in Devachan and just go around and around and around and watch everything go wrong. Like, there's a reason. It's not just a mistake that we're here. There's a point.
Right.
Something in us too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
We've done a lot of, I think we talked about like the Akashic plane and like these kind of imprints that it leaves. And there's people, even the Dalai Lama is finally publicly kind of saying often that like he can remember his past lives now. He's always usually been such a humble guy.
Question mark.
Please.
It's a question mark when you say they can see, because like I said, Dalai Lama is, how can I explain myself? Like remember one class we say about like Sheila's good and Sheila's not so good. So it the same happen with the Dalai Lama.
Absolutely.
So sometimes good, because right now on the computer, the Google or YouTube, right now they speak too much about reincarnation from that line.
Mhm.
So they had
Oh,
too
right.
many problems with the sexual harassment. ¿Cómo se dice? Harassment?
Sexual harassment.
Yeah, say again?
Sexual harassment.
Yes, that point.
Mm.
So it is something very carefully, because with all of the respect, I start to read more about Theosophy if I find something about wrong, and until right now, I didn't find anything wrong.
Mhm.
Until right now, okay? Until right now, I didn't find anything. But that one is because I think so in this study, we don't follow nobody. In that kind, the religion, we can say religion, they follow one person. That person is Dalai Lama. So all the eyes go on that person.
So like whatever guru, yeah.
Well, it's just like what I was saying, even if the Dalai Lama doesn't place himself there are millions of people that place the Dalai Lama between themselves and divinity. Like I was saying, like he's an enabler of their purpose and stuff, which I think is kind of not his message, but it might be kind of hard to accept sometimes. But Blavatsky, she wouldn't have written Isis, and she would have done what she did if Buddhism and Hinduism were still completely pure and had everything, all the pure teachings. We have a tendency, especially in the West, or even as Theosophists, to kind of like, ooh, Buddhism, ooh, Vedanta.
That's why
Yeah,
the Theosophy, they send it to the original writing, not like a superficial. Because right now everybody say mindfulness or
Mindfulness.
Yeah,
It's like
Transcendental.
yeah, that's one. If you let me to do this
it's like a
one,
trend. Yeah.
yes. But Madame Blavatsky, or the master, they send it to the original, to the root of everything, not to the that kind of level. No, superficial. They find out why is why. And always they give you the opportunity for us to ask,
Mhm,
not to follow nobody.
mhm.
Mhm.
So that's it, the difference. That's it, the difference to religion and this kind of stuff.
Mm.
Is we don't have dogmatism, we don't have a leader.
Mhm.
No, we are the own master.
Yeah.
They all have that in common, even the Dalai Lama. They don't say follow me. They say follow the teachings.
Yeah.
Nobody says that.
Nobody says
Blavatsky. And the idea of perfection.
She said quite a few times that like I'm not even doing this the best way. Like don't follow me,
Yeah.
follow this, because I'm trying, but I get in spats with
Yeah.
What she says about these higher beings like Buddha or Christ or anybody, Tsongkhapa, Nagarjuna or Shankaracharya, anybody, or Plato, they're like signs on the road
Mm.
to us. So it's a sign, but it's not the end of the road. So the idea of perfection, speaking of infallibility, we know that perfection is relative to the cycle that we live in.
Sure.
So if Buddha is a perfection of our, cycle, then it would be the imperfection for the next cycle. So therefore, fallibility is everywhere. Because even if we say infallible, it's only relative to the advancement of that thing.
Well, and if we're infallible, do we have true will? And if we're infallible, how do you grow? Like, you know, like if you're infallible, you're kind of just
Right.
set, and yeah.
That's it. There's no more, right? And that's not, there's
That's
no
not
such
the
a thing.
point. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Even like if you take nirvana, you know, the highest bliss, you know, maybe you're infallible there, but you're there.
You're done. That's it. Yeah.
That's as good.
That's for now.
That's as
Yeah.
good as
You're-
it gets.
But you're done for now. Because what Blavatsky says, at the end of the Mahamambantara, it's a great cycle. The Lord will make everything appear again
That's right.
on a new cycle. So therefore, a new beginning. And that's why perfection is relative. It's just like, you know, you might perfected your things today, but tomorrow, when you perfected yesterday, it's already yesterday.
Yeah.
You have more to do. And that's the same thing with perfection. The masters, whether it be adepts
Yeah.
or Buddhas or Christ or anybody,
Yeah.
there's no into it.
Well, and it's going on Tony's point, there's like last time we were doing history, we read about how like there was a lot of really high holy adepts, Vedanta and Hindu adepts who were coming to Blavatsky and really liked her at first, were really studying with her. But this teaching in Theosophy that's very, very important, the sevenfold nature of man, and a lot of things, but especially the sevenfold nature of man. She had these old mystic, just amazing people that like, they had they were on board the whole thing. It was the same with their ideas, but they were at like a 5 or 6 fold. And she could have easily said like, okay, let's go with yours, and spread like wildfire. But that wasn't it. And she stuck to her guns, and it has to have cost her quite a few students, you know? And like, but if she would have abandoned the sevenfold nature of man, she would have been almost saying that like, you got it, you don't need me or anything. Yeah. So like that.
Yeah, it's the idea that all the systems were just keeping other things for themselves.
Mhm.
And the way that she came to spread, you know, all these things, and a lot of them didn't like it, but she said because the minds are already receptive for this.
Mhm.
So here it is. And a lot of people, you know, in the sects or systems or whatever, they didn't want to do that. They only want to keep it among the highest, the wisest.
Mhm.
And that's why they got to send her, because she said, here it is.
It's getting
Like, oh, world.
information out.
Yeah.
The secrets.
There
Yeah.
you go. Yeah.
But like, this thing, she talks about that there were eras where it was like you had, in the same school of thought, you had the higher teachings for the initiates, and then you had the lower teachings for the masses. But she was also kind of trying to do away with that. Like, it's over. Like, we're entering this new age of information and literal, you know, everybody can read these things, and it's like, everybody can have access to these higher teachings now. It's not like that, you know, you're in a Islamic country and you're not going to read for generations. Like, we all have access, especially now. But the wonderful thing too is there's so much till it's not translated.
But also when she started to explain about the sevenfold,
Mhm.
was another guy with the same master, was
Subaru.
so, and he doesn't want to explain about that. What the same master, but the different school, so different idea,
Mhm.
and also different caste or caste.
Mhm.
Caste, they don't
Brahma.
want,
Brahman, you know.
Brahma, yeah, for the Brahma, they say no. The
Yeah.
people doesn't have they don't have the opportunity or ellos no tienen la capacidad, they don't have no, it's not for the population.
Sure.
No, it's not for the population. They have to be, you know.
Oh, yeah. Be born in nobility.
Yes, and when the one of the letter to Signet asks about how I'm going to explain about the evolution, the human evolution, if I don't know about the sevenfold division. So what the master start to explain to Signet, no was Madame Blavatsky to explain. So that point, because I said, why is it? No, has to be clear.
Oh, yeah.
The master explained to Signet, and then the another guy, they say no.
Yeah,
But that is no problem for Mr. Madam Blavatsky, because the master started to explain.
right.
So it's a little, sometimes it's better to put the point.
Mhm.
Some,
Really, I think it's really important. I think that's why, like, we talk about like the one source and going back and becoming one again. It's like, that's because it is every little division and there's no such thing as an infallible vehicle. There's no such thing. On some level, it's going to be flawed. But so by taking the vehicle is to go into the great unknown, I guess. But here, one really great thing that happened from this, I guess, this article was Olcott he addressed the idea of something called thought transference and precipitation as a way that sometimes you could get instructions from a teacher or a master or something like that. In Buddhism, it's been around for a long time. They call it transmissions. There's a concept where you can, or a monk or a Rinpoche, someone, a meditative master can go away on a shaman and meditate for a long time and receive what are called transmissions, which are like Upanishads and Buddhist teachings and things like that, but they're from a source of a certain lineage and things like that. And it's very, very accepted, and that's where a lot of really important Buddhist texts come from, these transmissions. And essentially that's kind of, they talk about, like, he says that's a reason for the messages for sometimes being fallible, is because thought transference and precipitation, the master is giving you data that is going to be completely filtered through whoever is getting it. And if you're having a tough day, there are a million things that could come into it that could make you maybe express the data given in an inaccurate or clumsy, all kinds of ways. I know even like, I know that Tim and Alex work a lot on translations and stuff in Buddhist texts, and like they get frustrated all the time because they'll hit something that's just like, well, this word in this way, we literally don't know. Like, we don't know. You have to have a glossary. That's why we still maintain so many Sanskrit and Tibetan words, because just like German and other languages, there's no way that English for Rigpa or Vidya, there's a paradigm. It's not even close, But yeah, so moving on, kind of after this happened was like a pretty golden age again, similar to the time in New York when a lot of the people were being attracted and coming to visit. And she had students and teachers from every corner of the globe, every role of society. One of her big challenges and kind of missions in India that Tanya had talked about was the castes. You're familiar with the caste system they used to have in India?
It's like they're like class system.
Yeah, the British finally outlawed it in like 60, 70 years ago. After Gandhi, right? It was still, because Gandhi was fighting it too.
The castes.
So one of the big things is a lot of her early students in India, Hume and Sinnett, they had a lot to do with the Indian National Party, which ended up being where Gandhi came from. So Theosophy there, and she had many high teachers like Damodar and T. Savaro. They were Brahmins. A Brahmin, you're considered, it means like godly, right? Godlike, something like that.
Well, they were supposed to, Brahman was a priest, but a policeman and a dead.
Yes, so the highest class of the caste system were Brahmins, but the being a spiritual adept had long ago not been part of it. It just become a way to be better than other people in society, and there's these castes. And if you're like one of the two bottom castes, the untouchables, and right above that, you weren't given really any opportunity to do anything, especially if you're untouchable. You're not even allowed to partake in society. And so she had a lot of early students that were Brahmins themselves that were big proponents of getting rid of this caste system, because even what birthed the caste system was long gone. India at this time was very, very much colonized. And a lot of one of her big purposes too was to reawaken the spiritual truths in this people, in this area. And to this day, I mean, there's a lot of people in the history where there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of like discord and things like that. But arguably, if you read what the master's like mission was for them going to India, I mean, they kind of pulled it off. It led to Gandhi. It led to like today we consider, I mean, even the most secular person kind of considers, Mumbai as one of the religious capitals of the world, especially spiritually. So.
Well, in the glossary, we can see the glossary is very,
A lot of these events.
yeah, about castes. Even where around, you want to see that?
Well, that's the most out of himself, which is,
So page 74, and that's an interesting subject. In case 74, and the second one,
There we go.
case.
oh, there you go.
Originally, the system of the four hereditary classes into which the Indian population was divided. The Brahman you were speaking of. Then the Kshatriya.
It's like warrior class, right?
The Kshatriyas are the warriors.
Okay, that's fine.
And the Vaishya, they were like the
Service.
and Shudra were the more like the servants, the merchants.
Okay.
So merchants and the servers. So four classes. But the interesting point of that is that the way Blavatsky kind of brought that up is that these are only aspects in humanity. You have all those four aspects in yourself. You have the aspect of the highest, the God, when I say that, the priests, the Brahman. You have the aspect of the warrior. You have the aspect of the merchant, and you have the aspect of the server. So you have all those aspects in yourself. Which one is really, showing up in ourselves?
Right.
And that's the analogy that
train yourself for one of
that's
them.
the analogy that she does. Therefore, we have the Bhagavad Gita. See, the Bhagavad Gita is a war, but the warrior here is Arjuna. So he's not a priest. He's not a Brahman. And yet, he has direct communication with Krishna, your inner God. And therefore, the idea of the castes, they have to be kind of, broken off, so they won't be like really so attached that only you get this because you're a Brahman. You don't get this because you are a servant. So all of that, if you put it in a philosophical point of view, then it's within ourselves. You have the four castes. And really, it's neither one is better than the other one.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a Brahman, be a Brahman. If you're a servant, be a servant. It's very
Human nature, especially society, doesn't function without any of those. You're not just the wrong, it's any of them.
Yeah.
It's sometimes I hear these conspiracy theories people like talk about of like, the rich and powerful wanting to wipe out the poor. And I'm like, well, no, because they need the poor to be rich and powerful. If there's no poor, they're not rich anymore.
Exactly.
It's just
Interdependence.
Right.
Yeah. Interdependence.
But no, it's a great point. I think like she did, there was a lot of people that were really upset with that. One's being like the Jesuit mission as well, because one of their really big selling points was, freeing people from the caste system, giving them a Western education, things like that. I mean, it's what happened to Gandhi. Gandhi was a product of modern India, but at the same time was lucky enough to come years after what had been established by the National Indian Congress and these Blavatsky followers. I mean, he was able to go and become, study at law, become a lawyer in England, and came back and was able to really take this mind that he had honed and apply it to these spiritual teachings and things like that. I mean,
and then
without what he did, you'd be having the same situation in India that we have in the Middle East still.
Classism would still be.
It would have, yeah.
And that's why he did what he did, because he went back and he saw the difference, how everybody was treated different.
You find, and people are to this day so surprised to hear, his assassin was a Hindu. His assassin was was supposed to be on his side, but thought he was going too easy on the Muslims.
Wow.
And it's just like, wow. And you don't see that coming, but
I think he killed shit karma for the rest of your life.
I mean, he probably didn't have very good karma going into it.
I mean, almost every human being that begins to do something really good, he gets killed in many different ways, you know. I mean, Blavatsky she had a lot of traitors, and yet, even though they knew that those were the people that needed to help. They were the ones that needed help.
And hindsight's an amazing thing. In almost every case of people that kind of betrayed her, you see them later in life really regretting it. Really trying to come to terms with it. Like,
oh yeah, well, yeah, it stays with you forever.
And I think that's like, it's important too to remember that, like, talk about fallibility. Like, William Kwan Judge was her most devout student, but like, they fought. Blavatsky and Judge over like letters.
She was not
like cats and dogs they fought, but he never left her over it. They were family. This was his guru. Like, he knew she was fallible, but you know, you see in her writing, she can,
she lit him up.
if she wants to light somebody up, man, one of the best still.
Oh,
And that's what's great is you can read they're fighting like brother and sister sometimes, or even mother and son. But everything's gonna be okay.
It
Like,
shows that
that's
she's
what people
humble
do.
though. She's not trying to like hang her intelligence over anybody's head.
Very humble, to a point where Olcott and some of her other followers would tell her she was being too humble and she needed to take more of put her foot down more and do like these authoritative things. And she was just, it's
Not classes at all.
And I mean, she didn't have long for this world. Even when she started Theosophy, you could tell she was a mash burning at both ends. This was just, her life force was just being drained by all these people, by us, future generations that are gonna have these teachings. They say it's like a flame that burns twice as hot, you know, burns out half as long or something.
Well, they both knew that this was not the first time they met in a body in the world. They recognized each other from past lives, and they worked together. So that's why they could, you know, fight, but you know, they knew what they were doing.
You know what? Like, I think especially if you're not raised in it, some of these Eastern philosophies and some of these ideas of reincarnation and the void and things like that can be kind of scary.
Yeah.
They kind of seem big and mysterious and unfamiliar. But something that I love that Blavatsky made a point of time and time again is that intelligences, me and you and everybody, we tend to reincarnate together. Like, there's these eternal almost communities reaching back to maybe other worlds that, you know, maybe me and Ricardo have been reincarnating in some kind of relationship for 10,000 years.
Yeah.
And that's what she said. There's the law of attraction. Everybody in the kind of studies.
Yeah.
You meet people in your life where there is no reason you should have the familiarity you have with them right away. There's no reason. But all of a sudden it's just like, oh, a brother, a kindred spirit, you know?
It brings the community to death, so it's not so secular. Like, you're not so scared they're going to die alone. You're
And
like,
I think that's what's so important about physical meetings like this.
Yeah.
That is, it's probably possible, but it's so much harder to see on a screen or on a phone call or something like that. You know, like it happens and it's totally possible, but when we can really get together and share like ideas. And I think that's why, like, especially when we're able to do these live and not just like recorded, the people online too, like some of the Pierre's classes and some of the breakthroughs they have, because, you know, it's online, but they've been together so long that they're like, they have this kind of communication that they wouldn't have had if it was just regular Zoom classes. I mean, they went through COVID together. So.
Yeah, it's a special bond.
Yeah.
Well, definitely technology is going to change things. It's changing things already. I mean, since, 20, 30 years ago. So, and we will change too.
I use AI at my job now. I probably don't go 2 hours without doing something with AI. And soon my whole job, I'm just gonna be like,
What do you do?
like digital forensics, cybersecurity and stuff. So a lot of it's automated and more automated. It's gonna become a point where like back to just like my job is just pushing a button and watching something happen.
And the idea that needing physical contact is that because in the kind of we may say the state of consciousness that we are, because we are used to seeing ourselves separate. You know, you're there, oh, he's way over there.
I,
But then in that time when we don't have to be, I mean, we can be present in mind, and you're not gonna feel far away if you're in the other side of the world. There's gonna be this communication, and because we used to live in the first, well, this is not to go into that deep, but in the first races, you know, races is
are you familiar with the theosophical concept of races?
no, well, race is a state of consciousness of humanity.
Okay.
But
These aren't like ethnic races.
we can go back to
They're like
many years, the condition of humanity was different.
So like everybody comes from Africa.
I mean, even way before, this is speaking of like Atlantean, like
Okay,
the
yeah.
first two, three races that we're talking about would be unrecognizable as a human.
Okay.
Like they were almost like didn't even have a body until the third race, you know.
Well, we had a body, but it wasn't as physical as we are now.
I think we only lost telepathic like communication in the
On
last.
the third one.
The
Yeah.
Egyptians.
Well, no. Maybe we can make another meeting about that.
Yeah.
Because this is, like, see, just briefly, you probably heard that we are the Aryans, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like
so
how it goes like Atlanteans, then they populated Egypt, and then whatever else came after that.
if we see the world as we see it today, we are the Aryans. Now, before that, we were all the Atlanteans, the
Mhm.
whole world, not only a continent. Now, and then before that, it was the Lemurians.
Yes. I know
Then
that.
before that, there was another that is called the second sweatborn. The sweat, yeah. And then
Okay.
before that, it was the first one in this kind of globe on Earth.
Oh, it goes back to like the different like we're like supposed to be the seventh, right? Like the most
Yeah,
perfect.
that's what the Aryan.
Right.
Yeah.
So Aryan, even modern anthropology, we still have this thing from our media and movies and stuff that Aryan means white power. And genetically, the most Aryan people on Earth are Indians, or ethnic Indians.
Oh, okay.
And Persians have more Aryan blood than I do. But like that's that's just anthropological Aryan.
Yeah.
Aryan that we're talking about is the current seventh race of humanity, and the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita have been talking about the Aryans for thousands of years. Like it's not the Nazis stole a whole
It's
bunch of
supposed to be
stuff.
the most perfected race.
I mean, it's most current.
Yeah.
At least, Blavatsky says at least 1,000,000 years have passed for the Aryans.
Uh-huh.
And so therefore, I was going to the idea of communication.
Mhm.
So we used to communicate differently,
Uh-huh.
but we were more spiritual, but not so intellectual or intelligent. Now we are more intelligent than spiritual.
Mm.
So now we have to get both together.
Yeah.
And as we advance, we should be, or humanity should be in the future, races and growth and whatever cycles. It should be highly spiritual and intelligent. So therefore, the idea of needing to meet is going to be vanished probably, because you're going to have communication.
Yeah.
You know, there will be no distance.
Sure.
You know.
And I mean, that's the thing. It's almost just a state of mind because there isn't really any distance anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just
It's a perception that we have.
right. It's just like how people. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I don't know the equations. I'm not a quantum physicist, but I recognize. I kind of get the concept that time is a construct, that we perceive time in a line instead of what it really is.
Because we're so small, yeah.
Just because I recognize that, and just even if I understood it, I don't know anybody that isn't aging just because they understand that concept, you know? Like you're
Yeah.
still subject
Right.
to it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of,
Yeah.
that's why they call us Kali Yuga, because we can, I mean, as long as we're here, there's gonna be suffering, that's it. And it's not supposed to be scary by saying that. The point in Buddhism, when they say all life is suffering, is for what that means. Is that it means the only sanity, the only growth, the only way through this is kindness. And, you know, to end suffering, to work to end suffering.
Yeah, if you look at it like
It's not to bum everybody out.
Yeah.
And in Theosophy, is suffering for the personality. Is what suffers. is that part of us that is attached to things, that suffers.
Such a good
Because
point.
there's a part in ourselves that is not attached to anything. So that part in ourselves does not suffer. And we have to be there. Like, like a Buddha. He can be in the world but not be in the world. So that's the idea of learning all of this to come to detach from everything that we are attached to, feelings, emotions, anything, everything,
Yeah.
books, philosophy, everything.
That's why the Yoga Sutras were written too, because we're so like emotional attached to everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
Also, you're familiar with the Yoga Sutras?
Yeah, I've studied them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's
I
a
don't have a memory.
there's a theosophical translation.
Mhm.
Is it the same as Patanjali?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a Patanjali.
That's the one that.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yoga. Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
judge translation called the aphorisms.
Aphorism of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the idea. That that it's only suffering for the personality, for the part that is attached.
Yeah.
But that's how we learn. And you mentioned Kali Yuga, and you said it too. It's when we learn more, because there's the four yugas, right? The golden age, the silver age. I just use these terms, and then what it will be the bronze age. And now we're the iron age.
Okay.
So if we were in the first one, it would be almost like perfection. No suffering, no learning, nothing.
And no growth.
No growth, exactly. So we are on the Kali Yuga, which is the dark age. Dark only because we have identified ourselves with personal things. That's why it's dark. But even if we're living in Kali Yuga, you don't have to experience Kali Yuga if you make a point not to. I mean, you become detaching from all the senses, perception, and you can be in the highest, in the golden yuga, and still be in the world participating.
Yeah.
That's why you were talking about those that come and help humanity. That's what they do. They can help better because they don't attach to anything. They can help us better. When somebody in the hospitals, those that make surgeries, you have a relative in surgery, you don't want to do surgery on them. You have somebody else
Yeah.
do surgery because you are attached.
The appropriate instruments.
Right.
Yeah. We want to make ourselves into the appropriate instrument.
Right.
But there's two big words in theosophy. The same word, Sanskrit and Tibetan, is vidya and rigpa, which means like pristine consciousness, unconditioned consciousness, and that's that part of us that doesn't suffer because there's no condition, there's no pre-lying conditions, there's nothing. That pure consciousness is. You have no conditions. You're just seeing and experiencing things as it is. But as long as we have any conditioning, any past experience, like there's going to be suffering because there's conflict.
Well, I think we can have past experiences, but if we learn how to live them through, then we can probably free ourselves from that. So anyway, I don't know if anybody has a.
Oh yeah, sorry, we've been talking a lot. Barbara, don't you have anything to say?
No.
How are we doing?
Well, I think I'd just add to what you were saying is a conscious state or a state of is a state of being aware and being connected. And when you're in that connected state, you're sort of out of time, but in time at the same time. And since I went to the big meeting and they were talking about karma, I've been studying karma and trying to understand what it is. A friend of mine showed me this picture of a statue, and it was a person standing on top of an animal, which kind of represents, instinctive center or whatever, that they have subdued instinctive center and have the higher part of them functioning. And the person was holding, this was after the war or during the war, I can't remember what he told me, but he was holding a sword in his hand, and it was actually a woman holding a sword in her hand and holding it straight upward, showing that it's sort of like a prayer. It's a moment of being present, being actually there, being I am with the one Father or whatever you want to call it, God or whatever you want to call it, So many names, 100 names, 101 names in Arabic for God, and 72 in Judaism. There are so many different names of God, but whatever you choose to call this energy, this connection you have, and holding this sword straight up. And that next moment, whatever it is not the choice of the animal below you, but the choice of the intellect and intelligence that's completely surrounding you. I don't know how to put it in words, but therefore you don't really have that karma anymore, because it's not the choice of the physical body, it's the choice of God the next moment you take. So I understood that, and I've been just trying to feel myself through it, right now in this moment, at every moment, and connecting and making my best effort to connect and to understand this concept, which I've just been kind of digesting and pondering on. So I just wanted to put that as a thought.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's awesome.
I thank you guys, because without it, I wouldn't have thought about it. I would not have thought about it. I mean, I've heard the word karma, but I had no idea until you guys started talking about it and gave me just like an arrow where I could understand something where it was being pointed out to me, and I said, "Wow, it's amazing."
Barbara, I'll send it to you if you don't have it. But do you have the Judges' aphorisms on karma? Just the little book.
No.
It's so good. It's really concise. Excellent. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Great.
In the secret doctrine, well, everywhere, the definition of karma, which everything falls short. Because it's a law. It's universal law. It's not a law, man-made law. But it says, simply put, karma is action. So what is not in action? Movement. Everything is action. I mean, atoms, everything. So that's from one point of view. The other point of view is called infallible retribution, which means that you're gonna get only what you deserve. I mean, without making it positive or negative, but it's something that you have set up in the past, whether it be a thought, a feeling, an emotion, anything is gonna have a result. So any of that has a reaction. So that's what we're getting. So we may say that this life is a reaction of the past. Although it is said that this life becomes with the environment that we get, it might be from several past lives that the moment is ready, is apt, so we can sort of like burn several past karma that we had.
Yeah.
And so therefore, simply put, karma is action, so everything is karma. What is not in action, an activity. And the other is the infallible retribution. That's then becomes the idea of the form and the intelligent part in ourselves. That part in ourselves that thinks, the part that moves the body, because we know the body is only our vehicle. So that infallible retribution to that part of ourselves that we keep. There's this part that is called the reincarnating ego, with capital letters. It's not like ego, but ego. And so that part, which is to keep reincarnating, or higher manas, is the part where it's applied to infallible retribution. And therefore, we were speaking of past.
There you go. You want to know something infallible? It's karmic retribution.
That's infallible. Yeah, exactly. It's you. I was gonna say that. Yeah.
No, that's perfect.
That's the only thing infallible.
Yeah.
Karma.
Wow.
Retribution. Yeah.
I mean, I think something beautiful about Theosophy that still is one of the most important things of Theosophy to me is, I think in a lot of Westerners, concepts of karma before you really get into it is just like kind of an isolated view of it. It's like, oh, this is a thing that pertains to me. And reincarnation, if I'm good, then I'm gonna have good karma. If I'm bad, I'm gonna have bad karma.
Yeah.
No, you find out that you've lived a zillion lives, and your karma is just as much wrapped up in your family, in your nation, in your culture, in your people, in your as much as it is the karma is a team game here. Like no one's in it for themselves, and no one's karma. No one can just be like, I'm going to focus on me for 10,000 lifetimes and my own karma, and it'll be great. That doesn't work. They talk about the Buddha and some of these higher beings that can see karma. They can literally see it, and someone described that in some other cult readings that imagine seeing, like, you can see the equations, you can see the algorithm of life, of the future, and it's like it's not like thinking a few moves ahead in chess. It's like thinking thousands of moves ahead in chess to understand karma, the direction of these things. It's just millions of people and cultures interplaying off of each other. It's just like so many cultures have that same saying, when it's a man is not an island unto himself. No matter how hard you try, you can be the most aesthetic, I'm gonna go live in this cave, but your karma, not just yours. There's no way.
Yeah, and the way we measure karma is either we're happy or we suffer, So the idea is that karma is really neither or, but the way I experience it and I judge it, then I think that I'm going through a really bad karma. Well, as we said before, maybe it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
It might be good for your soul, and you're going through that because you're learning something.
It's a temporary.
So we don't really know karma. We're studying it, but we don't. Who knows? What it is. But the idea of karma is that the way we judge it is really falls short. But there's some examples too, like I know Judge Blavatsky mentioned this, that there's one, each life is a new experience. Besides karma, it's a new experience. Learning something. You always get something out of it. When you're a kid or when you're learning in school, you go through a really hard test. And then, you say, but then when you come out of it, you got really something out of it. So karma might be like that I think is really suffering is really bad for me. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's something that I'm going to be not as a person, but as that higher being, the higher part that reincarnates is good for that to go through this experience. Some say that, for example, if in a family there's this soul that is born and from his childhood suffers, or it looks like an angel, he helps everybody, then he dies. Mm-hmm. So then everybody suffers because of the loss. But maybe that ego reincarnated part, maybe that was the purpose, to learn and for others to learn what it was to love somebody. So karma is really, in a way, it's a mysterious thing.
It's
teaching, yeah.
It's very Campbellian as well. Like in mythology and in history, all of the great heroes had to be forged by fire, had to go through it. Hercules, Gilgamesh, everybody had to go through it. Jesus had to suffer in the wilderness and be tempted. Like it's not just stories told us to make the heroes more sympathetic. It's the process.
Right.
I mean, it's nothing gained without suffering. It's
right.
Why those are so sad, But it's that temperance and that forged by fire that, like, I mean, do you want to follow a teacher that's never been through anything?
No,
It's just been like, I'm born in the suburbs, I was an accountant, and now I have all these teachings to bestow upon everybody. What have you been through? Who are you? What? Yeah. And that's why, that's why lineages are important. I think a lot of people, especially, we think that, like, it's just a way to seem fancy by saying, like, I come from this teacher and this tradition and come from there and from there. It's not necessarily for bragging rights, it's for legitimacy. It's to be like, this is a tradition, I'm teaching what has been taught back in this line.
Explains why you are the way that you are, yeah.
Yeah, in oral tradition, we see many examples. Oral traditions, they morph. A lot of the reasons why the Jewish people have sustained so long is really simple. They wrote everything down. Nobody else was writing stuff down. Like, not everything. A lot of people were writing in plates and codes and things like that, but not their entire histories at the time. So that's a big thing. Like the reason we know almost nothing about the Mayan and the Aztecs is they just straight up burned all the books. The Mayans had thousands of religious texts on scrolls and all we have is like the Pope rule and like maybe 3 other notices. And you know, and so today we think that maybe they didn't have much of a culture or something like that, but no, we literally know nothing. Like, it's amazing, and it's the same thing too, is like people are, well, Atlantis couldn't have been a thing. Well, it's like, look, I mean, that the Mayan Empire was only 1,000, it was destroyed, what, it was 600 years ago about. And it's only been 600 years and we know nothing. It was wiped almost that completely. This monstrous, they had, the main city had more people than Rome at its height. And major culture and everything, and it's gone. So like, we think that we're so important. If we disappeared tomorrow, like, and the world just was left to nature, there'd be no sign of us in a few hundred years.
Yeah.
And people think it's madness that there could have been an Atlantis in the society, but it's like Egypt. Look at there's very little left of what we think
They were
Egypt
called
was.
pollinators. That's why they're little like, I forget what that thing is
Oh,
called. but
yes, yeah.
Striped, black and yellow.
They're finding a new pyramid like every year. It's just under the sand.
A new shape.
Yeah, if I am.
Turkey, Cappadocia, they're finding these underground temples
Dendera,
constantly.
like all that shit.
Constantly. And there's like, oh, here's a brilliant Christian fresco, maybe 1,800 years old. No one's ever seen it.
Yeah.
That stuff's everywhere.
Dendera alone was like 20,000 people lived underground.
Oh, yeah.
Proving that it was built before the Delhi.
Yeah. And when I was out there, it's amazing.
You
You
went
notice, yeah, I spent a lot of time in
Oh,
Turkey. Like, it's awesome. You go to these areas like Ephesus and Cappadocia, and it's like
Like the Fertile Crescent.
40,000 years of constant human habitation. Like, it's just, history is everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's nothing. That's nothing compared to the Kali Yuga, man. We're still.
Isn't each
It's only the
like
beginning.
25,000?
I think they're longer. I think Kali was like 48,000 or something, isn't it?
You are supposed to be 232,000 years.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah, it makes the number 9, 432, 432,000 years. So we're in the first 5,000 years.
Wow.
But that means us and the generations that's why it's important for us to teach. So that's why the work is important, because not just us, but the generations after us, they are in a very important time, a very important age.
Yeah.
And like we all think, I mean, man, like one of the things that keeps my hope in the world and keeps me kind of my sense of wonder is following archaeological news, because they're always finding something amazing.
It gives us hope.
But if I pay attention to actual news, I mean, England's falling apart. You see this, and like,
The whole world is
it's,
on fire.
I mean, we just sent 1 million F-16s to Ukraine, and everybody's happy about that. Like, I'm like, I mean, it's good they can defend themselves, but let's not celebrate.
Barbaric. Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, there's still so much, and there's, I'll tell a little story before I'm done here. There was a stray kitten, the cats. Actually, there's these cats back in the back, and they had kittens. One of them had 3 kittens, and slowly 2 of them disappeared, and it just looked like the last one left was getting worse and worse every day. So I was like, I couldn't watch anymore. So I went and got him, took him to this vet, and I didn't know what I'm doing. I'm not equipped to be like a caretaker for a tiny animal at all. It's like really bad shape, really bad shape. And I reached out on, like, people told me to reach out on the Nextdoor app and ask for help. And like the vet, anyway, like without like this community, like stepping up of people that like reaffirm your faith in humanity, like, oh, I was such a stressed out mess. Was forgetting about work and just all I could think about, but people came out of the woodwork, bringing me medicines and stuff, helping me find a home. And like within like 2 days, I would find this family that knew what they were doing, who had a reinflated. And so like the cat's like, yeah, you'll be okay. I don't know. But like, it's like, you, especially here too in LA, you just think everybody's awful. Nobody's, but like, whoa, some people stepped up, like really did for this little kitten. And like, oh, and another thing too is like, they're strangers, and I'm talking to these strangers online being like, I can't handle this. Someone needs to come take this cat. I emotionally have what? There's one. And I was telling people, strangers online, they're trying to help me. I'm being hysterical. And I'm just like, I can't handle this. And people are like putting up with me. They know what I'm going through, and they're strangers. And I could go back through these messages and be like, man, I was losing it. And these nice people are just being like, settle down, you're doing a good job. And it turned out okay, but like that, I felt so isolated just taking this little kid home and just staring at her. Like, what do I do? And it's wonderful. And it'll be a big, strong, crazy cat one day. So,
Yeah. All because of you. That's
Yeah.
I'm hoping I can keep in touch with the family because I feel really bad about the mom. Because now I feel like she's just staring at me. She knows.
She's like, where are my
So
kids at?
I hope when the cat gets better, you can at least come and show it to the mom. Look, he's good. But I doubt it's a cat. I don't know. But
Wait,
still,
you don't know
I feel like
the
we
other
should. I mean, I kind of know now because I know what was wrong with the other kid. Just it was a zillion fleas, like it sucked it dry, had really bad anemia.
Are you
He
serious?
said his skin was white from fleas.
Holy shit.
And then his eyes are kind of sealed, so it was really bad
That
shit.
sounds bad, yeah.
He was just cries for his mom and stuff, but he started eating and, yeah, good times.
Karma, maybe they should.
See, and that's one of those things too, it felt like the worst karma ever. I was like, why did I do this? I thought I was doing like a good thing, and I'm just like, oh, along with this kitten.
See, you
And
did a
it's
good
just
thing.
tiny bones, like, whoo.
You see that cat's life.
Yeah, I mean, it helped. The family's doing a lot more for that.
It's incredible though. You cared enough to like get him to a better place.
Yeah, well, I was looking at those kids and I was like, oh man, we're like Theosophists. We shouldn't be letting these little kittens. But at the same time, they're really feral cats. Like, it's not as easy as just going and taking care of them. Like, they're a lot. Yeah, but I think I'll go on. I think that's something that's really important, and we intellectualize so much, and we study such deep things. We have such varied interests. We're also smart and can cite all these philosophers and things that sometimes we do lose sight. And Blavatsky, that's why she constantly was reminding us that like, you can be this intellectual person. You can write in all these periodicals. You can have all these things, but if you're not actively engaged in the benefit of your fellow mankind, you are no Theosophist.
And don't forget where you come from.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful thing that a Kabbalist, a Zohar studying Kabbalist, he was raised Jewish, he's secular now, but he still studies the Kabbalah. He told me this wonderful thing that I think so many people need to hear. And he said, don't abandon the faith of your fathers. Not meaning that you have to stick by it, even if you don't believe it. But he says there was something in that. There was some beauty in the faith of your fathers. The reason that these generations before you had that, and there's a value in that. Even if it's not like that it's true in monotheistic way, like, like a lot of people know, I was like raised Mormon. And I'm like one of those Mormons. I don't have like a lot of traumatic experiences from it. Like I was just like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
And like my dad's very, very, very liberal guy, but very Mormon. And it's like, and I just really like the way that was put. Like, not abandoning the faith of your father doesn't mean like, oh, I'm not going to be Catholic because Catholic's not right. It's like, no, there was substance there. Why were generations before you Catholic? And what was the appeal there for them?
You have to believe in something. Oh, that's too dark.
I mean, something we talk about that. They talk about that constantly in Buddhism, right? We're living in the most benefited because there's been so many ages of man that didn't have the teachings of the Buddha. Like I can't remember what they say, but they say literally just living in a time where you have access to the Buddha's teachings, give you something like 40,000 lifetimes of merit or something by just hearing it. It's like it's this huge advantage, and it's in other faiths too. That's why. Many Christian faiths, they constantly teach the new generation that like, hey, you're going to be the guys. You're going to be the ones that see the second coming. They taught my mom that. They taught my grandma that. And like me, I don't think so. But I think if the second coming happened in the last like couple hundred years, we just missed it. Like no one knew.
Everyone was on their phone.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all have a place,
Mhm.
and in fate and karma and everything. And just fulfill that. That's your dharma, your duty. You do your duty, whatever you think it is. Like you said,
Work.
yeah, it's a
Noble
work. Yeah, right. And with the study and with your pastors, parents, or all of that, and you kind of combine all of that, and
Sure.
you make your daily decisions based on that.
Yeah.
There's beauty, and Blavatsky tells us all that, like, why abandon the faith of the fathers when, like, there was truth there. There was a golden thread there. There was,
Yeah.
it was beautiful. And it was pure at one time.
Yeah.
It's like everything. All right. Well, I guess we got about a few minutes, so we'll just end there unless anybody else has anything to share. Next week, we'll either dive back into the history, or I kind of want to go over the article I was alluding to today, maybe next time to go over that. I found this wonderful kind of chapter in another history book that kind of talks about the different missions of the founders. And I think sometimes we get a little biased on certain figures in history, and it's a really good one that just shows the difference in mission, and especially like understandings of whoever gave them that mission. Because
Yeah, that sounds good.
yeah,
And before we go, then when you were talking about Olcott, Blavatsky, and Judge, which are the main founders, and why these three? I mean, they met, and the idea of Judge and Blavatsky acknowledging themselves again, recognizing again, that means that there's something in ourselves, like you were mentioning that you meet somebody, or you feel that you never talked to them before, and there you feel there's a connection. How is that possible? So the idea is that we are not very conscious, not very aware of it, although we feel it, but they were. Judge and Blavatsky were, and they actually said it. We have met before. And there's a book called "The Letters That Have Helped Me," William Q.
awesome.
Judge, and there's a lot about that, where he gets these glimpses with one of his teachers, and the teacher kind of tells him there's gonna be work on you in this part of the world. So he knew beforehand that he was gonna participate in some kind of work with Blavatsky, and so that's what it means, is that maybe in ourselves there's not maybe, but there's this part that little by little, with the study and practice, like you said, we begin to become aware of that part, and maybe the next time we meet, it'll be more like, oh, hey, I like to see you again, just like that. Of course, that's
One day, absolutely. Like the next. I mean, they say so. A really important thing with Blavatsky and Judge, and why Judge really makes sense when you read a lot, is that the culmination of this race, the culmination of the race we're in now, is supposed to happen on the American continent somewhere, sometime. Might be in millions of years, might not millions, but thousands, where maybe the continent and the people will be unrecognizable. But something's being prepared here, and they've been saying that since the New World was discovered. And there's something to that.
Yeah, well, that's for one cycle. For the next cycle, but but there's a lot more. There will be more.
Yeah.
Because we're on the fifth root race. Speaking of states of consciousness, and then she says you are the pioneers for the sixth. So that's like in all the American continent.
Yeah.
But at the same time, everybody's participating, because we know that nothing is really separated. We are all experiencing as a whole, humanity as a whole. We can say we're one being. What is the spirit of the earth? It's that entity that is experiencing through all the aspects, which is ourselves. So we can say that as we are an entity over our body, there's an entity, the planetary spirit of the earth. And therefore, of any planet or of any other planet that have their planetary spirits, then we can go to the solar system, and sometimes it's called the solar logos, which is the entity that experiences through all the different aspects, at least in this system. So the idea that
We think these are new ideas, but that's a really old concept.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we just like you said, Blavatsky is just bringing this old, or reminding us this is very old. But I don't remember. At least I didn't see it before in this life. So we have the opportunity to see it again. And that's something that we can gain a lot, even though we're living in the Kali Yuga, then maybe we don't have to suffer as much. Even though I lose, my body parts or whatever, and of course, I'm not saying that I won't hurt, but at least in your mind, you're thinking a little bit different.
Think of Nelson Mandela if he never was in prison.
Exactly.
Like think of so many of these figures. Like it's just, if you're gonna be great, you're gonna have to be forged. You're gonna think there's
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
I mean, so many.
So Gandhi, you mentioned Gandhi too. I
We
mean,
don't need mythical heroes as examples. We have plenty of real life heroes and
Right,
just like
exactly.
the best people ever, just being put through grinders and still sticking to their morals, sticking to their guns.
Which is incredible.
Yeah,
We're lucky to have those people.
absolutely. Good point. All right. Well, we'll end there, everybody. Thanks for coming, and
Thank you.
we'll see you next week. Unless anybody has anything to share.
Well, thank you very much for the meeting. I'm always very happy to be here, and I always learn a lot. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Barb. Love the Karma Talk. We'll have more.
was there? No.
Good night, everybody.
Well, it's nice to see you here.